Retro Hangover, supported via Patreon by listeners like you. We would especially like to thank patrons Lyle McCarnes, Ashton Ruby, Randall Quiggle, Tony G, Stud Still Smash the Milkman, Keith Gasper, Miss Peachy, JC, Megan Caruso, Mass Keaton, Andrew LaGuarri, Ozzy Garcia, The Retro Vixen, Adam from The Good, the Bad, the Backlog, Lunchbox, aka The Disgruntled Gamer, Dischimera, Jenny E, Rick Firestone, Parallax Puddles, Soha, Dave Jackson, Matt, aka Stormageddon, Retro Overdrive, B. Ross and Van Fernal from Super Garbage Day, Raging Demon, Storm Beagle, The Emperor, Eric Guess, Nomad from the Retro Wildlands podcast, Ash Event, Alan Bingham, Ryan, Player One, Mike the Ref from Backbreaker Gaming, Darth Emick, Low5 Alex, Alt, Renner Dreaming, and Oh Me. Your continued engagement and generous donations are deeply appreciated. Welcome to The Flight, a consumable curation of champions and catastrophes that is considerate of your chronometer. I am Chris Copeland, of course, from the Retro Hangover podcast. What else would I be from if you're listening to this? And I don't know what you think, but this episode might be one of those flights that may be poor enough or not well received enough or not talked about enough in order to kill the flight.
Yeah, this might be the last time you hear from us.
Might be. And that is your lovable host over there, the Dick Dragon who killed them all, Shane Koski. Welcome to your own show, Shane.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. It's always nice to be welcomed into my own space.
This is how I know we did this on I know I did that on was it King of Games 96? One of them, I think the first episode, second episode. That's how we're going to kill this show. Is I'm just going to keep welcoming you to your own show, and people are going to wonder how we have made it this far. And they're just gonna be like, we're done.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, I'm certain there must be at least a few out there that think that already.
I mean, true. And they're probably patrons, which makes it better.
They're like, I don't know how they made it this far. Surely it has nothing to do with the money that I'm giving them every month.
But probably not. It's certainly not because we get to the point so quickly in these episodes, because we have seen the comments. Just expect us to get right to the point. They hate foreplay. They must be terrible in bed. But you know what? While the 30 seconds that they are in there, it must be explosive. So I got to tip off my cap to the people who do not like the pre-listing banter. I'm sure they have qualities.
I just really appreciate that we're still salty about that months and years later.
I'm just having fun with it. I'm having fun with it.
Yeah.
I might make this banter even longer. No, I won't. You got to edit.
No, we got to go in dry.
Let's just get to the fucking point. Give us the top 5, motherfuckers. Dance monkeys. Okay, we'll do so. These are the top 5 franchises. No, these are the
Go on.
These are the top 5 games that killed their franchises.
Moida.
And
it was Moida.
It was Moida. And we once must stress. We once again must stress. There. Now my cognitive thoughts are coming together. These are our lists for series or games that we may have played or observed. And if your favorite series that died isn't part of this because of a shitty game, oh fucking well, you'll live.
I think so.
Why am I bitter?
Also,
I don't know why I'm so bitter today.
I don't know. I mean, it's probably because we're going to talk about franchises that were, destroyed.
Yeah.
That we probably liked,
Yeah. This episode is totally going to kill our show. That's why I'm bitter.
Thank
God.
God.
I'm going to have to
finally.
be a right-wing. I'm going to have to be a right-wing grifter on YouTube. And
let me talk to you about TRT. Do you have low T? Do you want to be a real man? Do you need yourself a trad wife? Oh God! All right. Before we go any further into that, how about we get this thing started? Does that sound good to you?
Let's do that.
Okay.
Let's do that.
All right. Well, in that case, Chris, why don't you go ahead and start get salty about franchises that were struck down in their prime.
Number 5.
All right, so I'm going to start this off with my number 5, as one naturally would in a top 5 list, and that is Mass Effect Andromeda. I don't even know why this game actually exists. I think Mass Effect ended with 3. It should have ended with 3, and we can all argue about the ending. I know a lot of people say it's trash. I'm not inclined to terribly disagree with that aspect. I think Mass Effect is more about the journey, the characters you meet along the way, the friends you make along the way, as one may say in the cliched manner. And I still think that it should have ended there. No matter how that ending was received by you, that's where it should have ended. Why is there more Mass Effect? I don't get it. Especially when you release a game that doesn't seem to have any of the soul that the original Mass Effect does. It just reeks of, we got to do something, and people remember Mass Effect, right? So if we put this out, they'll just buy it, and we're BioWare, even though we're a shell of our former selves, and people just lap this up. I don't think it sold, like, catastrophically bad. It didn't sell well, though, because I think I picked it up for 75 cents on a GameStop fire sale, if that gives you any indication how well this game was received. I don't even think it was that, from the people who've played it, I don't think it was that terrible. It's just there's no reason for it to exist. And it was such a buggy mess, it became memed to all hell on the internet, continuously dunked on, and I don't think there's ever going to be another Mass Effect, ever. And I'm kind of actually happy about that. All versions of Mass Effect that will be released from now until the end of time will probably be the Legendary Edition, and I think that's how it should be. Mass Effect Andromeda. So this is a game I'm going to say thank you for killing Mass Effect, because in the state that BioWare's in, I don't want you touching anything to do with one of my all-time favorite franchises, at least for now. Everyone can have a redemption. Just give it to someone else. Like Baldur's Gate, right? BioWare? Thank you. So yeah, there's my number 5. How about you, Shane?
All right. I think mine is kind of a little bit of a deep cut, starting this list off. But I went with Golden Axe Beast Rider. So I'm sure most folks are familiar with Golden Axe. If you're listening to this show, then you are probably in the age bracket where you played it in the arcade, as we also did. And so you may have some fond memories of Golden Axe. It's a pretty good side-scrolling beat 'em up. And I personally enjoy it. I like the aesthetic. It is very like 80s fantasy movie kind of style going on. I dig that. And so then if you've listened to the show, perhaps you can hearken back to a time, well, several times really, that we've talked about games, what made the jump from the 2 dimensions to the 3 dimensions and perhaps didn't quite stick the landing. This is probably one of those. I think in theory, the idea is kind of interesting. So taking Golden Axe to like a fully 3D, like third person behind the back perspective could be kind of cool. It worked for Gauntlet, for example. Gauntlet Legends, pretty good game. You know, I may or may not be biased there. Dark Legacy, probably the better version of it. But anyway, but this did no favors for the Golden Axe series at all. And I think one of the biggest things that a lot of people didn't like about it was it has 0 multiplayer, even local, like no local co-op, nothing. In a Golden Axe game, that's the whole idea. is like to play with friends and beat stuff up. Like, not having that is insane. So that's a big miss there. And then aside from that, it's just the controls were pretty janky, all things being equal, and the gameplay was surprisingly boring and repetitive, which you would not expect. Like, repetitive maybe because beat 'em ups don't get super creative, but like boring in an action fighting game, that is a nail in the coffin. So Golden Axe Beast Rider, it done murdered its own series, and we haven't really seen anything since.
Good pick. Poor Golden Axe. Actually, no, I don't feel bad. I never liked Golden Axe, so
Oh,
yeah, bye. I mean, the Golden Axe game I'm most interested in is Golden Axe the Duel, which is a fighting game, which is also weird. So
yeah, no, I'm good.
surprised that didn't kill it. I'm surprised that didn't kill it.
Number 4.
But speaking of fighting games, my number 4 is also kind of a deep cut. It will probably resonate with some PlayStation fans, old PlayStation fans, and that is Battle Arena Toshinden 3. I don't know how they made it to 3, but they did, and I remember being a big fan of it when I was a kid. And there are some actually forward-thinking control schemes that they had, like assigning a special move to a button as opposed to putting in inputs and stuff like that, which is how I remember playing this game, just spamming that button all the way to victory. But let's be honest about Battle Arena Toshinden. It's not a good fighting game. Takara got extremely lucky when they released it for the PlayStation because it was the best looking 3D fighting game on a console at the time, because Sega just couldn't get their shit together. I'm of course speaking on the North American audience. Battle Arena Toshinden was a visual marvel. It was a visual spectacle. It was incredibly impressive. And that's what drew people to play it. It's what drew people to the PlayStation. That's why I think if you talk to people that wanted to get a PlayStation in 1995, they at least knew what Toshinden was if they didn't want it. Well, then the sequel came out and it was essentially more of the same. And when I say more of the same, I'm saying it wasn't that good of a fighting game when you actually went beyond the visuals. And then they released the third one and did just absolutely fuck all with the gameplay once again. So you had tremendous potential in developing a new fighting game series that had really ushered in the new age of consoles in the United States, North America. And they just continuously kept pushing crap out there until this game just broke it. It's a shame. I have a soft spot in my heart for the Toshinden series, as mediocre as the first one is, and really the second and third for that matter. But these are just people who were in over their head and just thought that they could ride on a name for forever. And by the time they got to the third one, it just didn't work anymore. There's probably finer details on whether or not this game is truly bad. But it's been so long since I've played it, admittedly, and I really have no desire to go back to it because the nostalgia is really with the first one if I just want to play janky, bad fighting games. And I will say it's bad enough that Sega hired Takara to make, I think it was Takara who did make it for the PlayStation, to make versions for the Saturn up to the second one, but the third one they just skipped. So if you're wondering whatever happened to Toshinden, they did have a third game, and there was nothing after that ever again. There was a side story for it wasn't a side story. It was a different series made by the same people for the Saturn. Also not well received, and that was really the end of it. So yeah, that's my number 4, Battle Arena Toshinden 3.
Well, speaking of games trying to ride on a name, quite literally in this case, my number 4 is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5.
Nice.
Yeah, no, it's not actually. So, alrighty. If you're in our general age bracket, then the chances are pretty good that even if you didn't skateboard, and I did not, you probably played or at least had some sort of like tangential relation to a Tony Hawk game. They were everywhere. It was the era of skateboarding and Mountain Dew and extreme sports. It was a golden era, if ever there was. And So the series that had originally started with the likes of Neversoft and Vicarious Visions, eventually, and I think it was like '08, got passed off to a development house called Robomodo. And turns out the quality took a nosedive, kind of, no pun intended. And it got worse and worse. And then we get to the year 2015, which we see the release of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5. And the year is important in this particular story because 2015 also happens to be the year that the licensing deal between Mr. Hawk and Activision was going to expire by the end of that calendar year. And Activision was like, oh, fuck, we need to make another game. And so they basically pulled a couple of different dev shops together to cobble this thing into something that could pass as playable. It was developed literally within a few months and then was released very unfinished. If you had bought this game on release, you really couldn't play it, like at all. There were a couple of minor things that you could do, but the actual campaign was not there. It was inside of a day one patch that was something to the tune of like 8 gigs to download in 2015 on day one. People were not happy, as it turns out. And this was also coming off the heels of other Tony Hawk releases like Ride and whatever that tried to shoehorn in peripherals during the Guitar Hero craze, when they kind of wanted to try to capitalize on that, and it sucked. And this was supposed to be heralded as like a return to form because it was the first actual numbered release in the Tony Hawk series since like 2002 or something like that. So the people were like, all right, we're getting back to the roots. We're getting back to 1 and 2, the ones that everybody really likes. And it was not. It was a buggy, hastily slapped together mess that, because it's on this list, totally killed the Tony Hawk franchise. And other than some HD re-releases, we haven't really seen anything from since. And at this point, given how Mr. Hawk is kind of moving on in age, though to be fair, he looks damn good for like, what is he, like in his 50s or 60s now?
I mean, he looks like Tony Hawk.
Yeah, exactly. He's like Keanu Reeves. I feel like he doesn't age. But at any rate, I don't think we're going to see another one. We could, maybe we could, but I think maybe we're past that point now, and we can just live with those the Pro Skater 1 and 2 HD remake and leave it at that.
All right, thank you, Shane. I do have to make a correction. There was a Ballerina Toshinden game released after Ballerina Toshinden 3. It was called Toshinden 4, but it did not come out in the United States, which is why I probably have no idea about it. And why would they? Because Toshinden 3 was enough to kill the franchise.
There you go.
I am justified, damn it. Do not tell me otherwise. Someone will call me out. You don't know what you're talking about. Fuck you.
Number 3.
My number 3, I'm staying with the third release in a series. And I guess this is going to be technically debatable because there has been a remake of the first game that has come out recently, although it's dead again, appropriately by the name, and that is Dead Space 3.
Oh, God damn it.
Why? Is this on your list too?
It maybe. I'm also just it just really irritates me. That whole situation irritates me so much.
Do you want me to hold off until later? You just want me to go?
No, go for it.
We can just combine it. Okay. How can you? If you're going to get into survival horror, you have to understand the people who play survival horror. It's a large group of people, but it's not going to be the biggest group of people. There are a lot of people out there that just don't want to play scary games because they're pussies like me. I still buy them from time to time, but I don't buy them new because I don't get excited by them. So I'm not really your primary demographic, and there's not a ton of them. I know that EA understands this, but what they also don't understand is when you have a successful franchise, the way to broaden that appeal is not to betray the original vision of the franchise.
That's not what you do. You do not make a survival horror game based off being scary and add co-op. You don't make people think, you know what would make this game more scary? Microtransactions, which is actually true, but not in the way they want it to be scary. Dead Space 3 just was like, let's make our scary game an action game. And, with scary looking creatures doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be scary. Doesn't necessarily mean that we're trying to scare you. What we're trying to do is trying to make you scared to spend more money on us. And guess what? Just surprisingly, didn't work. I don't know why that happened. I have no idea why survival horror fans, in a feeling of isolation and just like surreal horror, just all this weird batshit craziness happening as a singular experience happening to one person, a plot structured around them, would all of a sudden go to co-op and be asked to spend $5 on bullshit, would just turn their back on that concept. And you know what? I'm sure it was the consumer's fault. EA, it was definitely not yours for trying to put out a crap product. No, it was your fault. And Dead Space 3 killed a franchise that unfortunately is dead today, because I think a lot of people assumed that EA was just going to go into the direction that they went with Dead Space 3. And you know what? I can't say I blame them. I can't say that they didn't trust EA, because if you do, you're a fucking idiot. Shane?
All right. Well, the middle of the pack, my number 3, I actually offhandedly mentioned it just a little while ago, and it is Guitar Hero Warriors of Rock. Now, if that game title doesn't sound familiar to you, that's okay, because as someone who played a metric fuck ton of Guitar Hero in college, I had never heard of this game until I went and looked this up today. So don't feel too bad. So this was around that same time I was talking about earlier, when Tony Hawk tried to shill a frickin' actual skateboard peripheral onto people, that the fake instrument peripheral craze was still chugging along fairly well. We had both Guitar Hero and Rock Band, and there are people that are on either side of that camp about which one they think is better. And so we got this glut of rhythm games, because of course, if there's one thing that we can count on the gaming industry, or really any industry, to reliably do, that is find something that works and then drive it into the fucking ground. And that is exactly what they did with music rhythm games at that time. And there were just too many. It was too many. Like, we had the mainline Guitar Hero series. We had a bunch of spin-offs, which, for the record, I will still maintain that Guitar Hero Metallica is actually really good. But a ton of spin-off games. And then we had this one, which was actually supposed to be a mainline Guitar Hero game, but it wasn't really titled that way. Guitar Hero Warriors of Rock honestly just sounds like yet another spin-off when it actually wasn't. And this was kind of at the tail end when things were starting to die down. And so, for a point of comparison, if you're curious, Guitar Hero 3, arguably the most popular Guitar Hero game out of the whole kit and caboodle, sold about 1.5 million copies in its first week. First week, okay? And now, Guitar Hero Warriors of Rock sold less than 90,000 copies in its first week.
Collector's alert.
Yeah, exactly. Go grab it now. It'll definitely be worth something later when you can't find any of the plastic guitars to play it. But yeah, go for it. So anyway, the funny thing about this too is that this came out and tanked. And also, this was right around the same time frame when Rock Band sort of died too. So I like to attribute it to killing two franchises. I think I'm going to say this was a 2-for-1 deal. I cannot confirm nor deny whether that is actually factually accurate, but in my headcanon, that's how this went down. So Warriors of Rock kind of totally nuked something that, to be fair, probably needed to die anyway because it had sort of run its course. I mean, when you start releasing fucking DJ Hero, you know you've kind of jumped the shark, right? But so there you have it.
I don't know if DJ Hero is jumping the shark just because of the Bimani series, and it's more of a homage to that. But I get
I
it.
think
Those
I think by the
turntables,
time it came out,
quality.
though, I think it was a little
Yeah.
too late. They were just like, what else can we do? What other fucking Banjo Hero? Let's do it. I'm actually surprised we didn't get a ska one where you could play a trumpet.
We did get not by them, but like we got the trombone game.
I don't the trombone game.
You haven't heard? What's the? Now I'm gonna have to type this up in the middle of the episode.
I think I know what you're talking about vaguely.
Trombone champ.
Ah, yes, right.
Yeah, we got that.
Well, there you go.
Number 2.
On to my number 2. And I've seen some people modernly say this game isn't so bad. It doesn't matter. When this game came out, it was just absolutely blasted and flame broiled and destroyed. And it did destroy an entire series. And this series is still dead. It did have a sequel after it, by the way, for mobile only. And it was a numbered sequel, but like no one's played it. And it took more than 10 years. I think like over 15 years for this game to be released, for the 6th entry in the series to be released, because the 5th entry here, oh my God, it was not received well. And that game is Breath of Fire 5 Dragon Quarter for the PlayStation 2. And if all things being honest here, the biggest problem with this game, with Dragon Quarter, and I think that's what the game was primarily called here in the United States, because it was such a deviation from what Breath of Fire was. This is a traditional Japanese RPG that, when it got to the 4th installment, was known for having just beautiful 2D pixel art, fantastic soundtracks, and plots that were somewhat complicated and had a lot of religious undertones. And from what I understand, because I've never had the opportunity to play it, I was a Breath of Fire fan for a little while, and I know this game unceremoniously killed the franchise, is that there's like no real plot to this game. In fact, they took a traditional JRPG and they essentially turned it into a roguelite or roguelike. I don't even know what the fucking difference is between those two anymore, or if there is one. But that's what they did, and that wasn't like implicitly communicated. It's like taking the original Super Mario Brothers, or taking the 2D Super Mario Brothers a line of video games, and saying like, okay, the sequel to Super Mario Brothers 2 is going to be a casino game with the Mario characters, which is probably something Nintendo has done. I think that's essentially Mario Party. But that's not like the next Mario game. That's what Capcom did with Breath of Fire. And it's sad because we haven't seen Breath of Fire in a long time, and there's a lot of fans for this franchise. And for it just to die off like that is a damn shame. We need the furry community to have their furry RPG, because we do hear about this in our Discord server, and I'm here for you. Because I loved Breath of Fire, first and foremost. I want you to have your Breath of Fire game back. I want it. I want you to have it. And Capcom, look, can we just pretend Breath of Fire 5 never existed? And that means 6 never existed too, because I don't think anyone cares about that whatsoever. Just go back to the drawing board, make a Breath of Fire 5, make it in a 2D HD whatever, and just give the people what they want in the isometric stance, because this game was a full 3D environment, because of course it was a PS2 game, so they had to do that. But man, oh man, was this game just received poorly. It was the wrong direction for the franchise at the time. Even if you go back and you just consider it to be its own game, and it might be fine, it's not a fucking Breath of Fire game, and it should never be considered one. So yeah, that's my number 2, Breath of Fire 5 Dragon Quarter.
All right. Well, for my last 2, you're going to notice a little bit of a trend. Two trends, actually. I think you'll probably pick up on it pretty quickly. So my number 2 is also as a third installment in a series. That's trend number 1. And it is Fear 3. And that's trend number 2, is that it's a horror game. So Fear 3, I am personally offended by this game. I just want to put that out there right now. So Fear is a fantastic game. If you like horror and you like first-person shooters, I don't know why you haven't played it yet, because it's amazing. At the time, the enemy AI was very impressive. They would actually try to use tactics to outwit you, not just running at you and hiding behind things, but they would try to flank you. And that was largely unheard of. And for it to be in a horror game of all things was doubly impressive. But the oppressive atmosphere, the pacing, like everything about it was just chef's kiss. And then Fear 2 Project Origin kind of took that and continued with it. And so we had these 2 entries into the Fear series that were pretty solid. I very much enjoyed them quite a bit. And then we got 3, and I was like, oh man, we're rounding out the trilogy. I can't wait. This is gonna be good, because the first 2 led me to believe that it's got to be good, right? Yeah. Except then Fear 3 was a full-on action shooter with sections where you like literally pilot a mech and blow things up. And also they had some really questionable tacked on multiplayer, because clearly everything needs multiplayer. You can't just have a single player game exist on its own, heaven forbid.
No,
never. And surprising to no one, it was not great. Let's just say that it took what was a pretty interesting storyline and background and universe, and shoehorned in things that didn't need to be there, completely changed the tone of the gameplay, and also really kind of butchered the story, because what they ended up doing with 3 was they veered real hard into just like real corny Saturday morning cartoon villain type shit. And it was negative scary. It was not Fear or Fear 2 at all, which was a huge bummer. And so we have not seen anything from the Fear franchise since, and I don't really suspect that we ever will. I think it was of its time, and I don't see anybody picking that up. I'm sure there's maybe there'll be some spiritual successors or something to that effect, but the actual game series, I don't think that'll ever get revived.
I'm so sorry. I feel bad for that. I've heard nothing but good things about the Fear series. So
yeah.
Number 1.
All right, I guess it's time for my number 1. And this is going to be hard to talk about because I always say that this game doesn't exist. So now I'm going to have to recognize it. And that is Lunar Dragon Song for the Nintendo DS. Yeah, I said that very quietly because I don't want to acknowledge its existence. Is this deeply personal for me? Yes, of course it is. This entire list is entirely subjective about games I would love to play or have loved the series of for some time. And I love Lunar 1 and Lunar 2. I love their remakes. I want to see more Lunar games. I want to see a prequel that takes place on the Blue Star, where Althena moves all of the people from the Blue Star to the Silver Star, and the calamity that ensues, and how cool that would be. And I'm just thinking to myself, like, this could completely happen. Take Takahashi from the Xenoblade series now, and put him in charge of that, because he's all about this Earth recreation, humanity shit. You can make it all deep and religious and all the weird stuff. I don't care. Just give me more Lunar. Give me some more content. But we're never going to get it again, because they came out with this game as part of an additional part of the plot, sort of, that exists in the same world, kind of, and they made it a horrible game. And I know there are people out there that will be apologists for it. You know what? Just go into a corner and cry and call your mother and tell them that you're a failure, because I'm going to tell you that this game is terrible. And that is because what kind of fucking RPG would you make that if you decide that if you want to just get out of the slow speed of walking, God forbid, and decide to dash with your B button, that you have to lose hit points? You don't have to lose hit points if you just walk places, but if you want to run places, yeah, you're going to have to suffer some health loss, like isn't hit points. Also, when you're fighting monsters, you can't pick which monsters which to target. You can't even pick which group of monsters you want to target, because the only option is attack, and your character will attack whatever it wants to, which is, you know what, that happened in Phantasy Star 3, I think. So I guess that's somewhat forgivable. But then when you win that battle, you don't get like experience points and like gold. You have to pick experience points or gold. And by the way, all of these things are done by going to like some sort of bounty hunter guild and then choosing quests to do in order to progress the story. It's fucking terrible. It's not Lunar, that's for goddamn sure. And I don't know what their thought process was when they released this game. It makes sense that a dog shit company like Ubisoft, which wasn't that dog shit back in like 2003, 2004. I mean, they probably were. But, you know, for them to publish this game, that makes sense. Because, oh my God, is it bad. It is the only game. I won't say only game, because I have traded in other games. It is the very first game, though. The very first game that within less than a month, I pre-ordered this game. I was hyped for this game. I tried to love this game. And still, it is the first game in my life within a month of getting it, going right back to the GameStop and telling them, fucking take it back. What a pile of horse shit. Fuck that game. And there hasn't been a new entry in the Lunar series since. We have had another remake of a remake with Lunar Silver Star Harmony for the PSP, but no single new release. And outside of that, there hasn't been a Western release for Lunar at all since Silver Star Harmony. Even though in Japan, they had it on the Sega Mini. Not in the United States. Sega didn't want to give Victor Ireland the money to put it on their mini console. It hasn't been released on the PlayStation 1, PS1 Classics. It hasn't been anywhere. The last new game in that treasured series is a flaming pile of dog shit. Fuck you, Lunar Dragon Song. Go straight to hell. And anyone who thinks they're cute and putting that in the RHRC voting block, I'm watching you. I'm fucking watching you. You need to be on a list. Crimes against humanity. Send them to the Hague.
See,
Shane.
I think that's a level of dedication to actually go to the store and demand a refund.
No, I didn't even demand a refund. I just said take it.
Oh.
Give me whatever credit you can.
You're like, I don't even
fucking
want
care.
the money. Just please take this from me.
Take this from me now.
I was trying to think. I don't think I've ever done that. I don't think I've ever returned a game because I disliked it that much.
Yeah, yeah, that was the first time. And I don't think the only other game I did that with, to my recollection, was Final Fantasy X 2. And that game actually cursed me because I traded it in. I thought I traded in another game. So I put it in. I had this other game called, I know a little bit of tangent here, it's called like Air Force Delta or something like that for the PS2, which I liked. I liked that game. I think it was a Capcom fighting game, air fighting game, not a fighting game, like a dog fighting game. And I put that in the Final Fantasy X-2 case, and I brought it with Lunar Dragon Song. I'm like, take these back. And take Lunar back. And they said, oh, you're going to get $30 for Lunar, and you're going to get $5 for Final Fantasy X-2. And I was angry. I'm like, I don't know how I'm getting this much money back for Lunar. Like, this game is fucking shit. I'll take it, but I shouldn't be. Why is it worth more than Final Fantasy X-2? I was so mad.
Oh man. Well, speaking of being mad about things, I suppose I should probably talk about my number one, which
Go for it.
which may have already been mentioned earlier in this episode, so I don't need to say too much. But it's Dead Space 3. Why would you do that to the series? It's so bad. What the hell? I okay, I know there are some people that really like it, and I'm not talking about Dead Space 3. I'm talking about Resident Evil 5, but I'm going to use it as an example, even though 4 was kind of already going in this direction. But 5 was, like, for me, a tipping point where Resident Evil had turned from a survival horror to just a full-on action shooter. And it's fine doing what it does, but it's not a fucking Resident Evil game. And it's the same thing with Dead Space 3. I didn't return Dead Space 3 because I didn't buy it in the first place. I played the first two. They're amazing. I love Dead Space 1 and 2. They are fantastic sci-fi space horror. They're basically like playing Event Horizon, and it's beautiful. I love it. 3, they were just like, you know, it'd be a great idea. People, you know, horror just really isn't, you know, marketable to the lowest common denominator of mouth breathing, like Dorito chomping gamers. So you know what we need to do? We need to turn this into something that closely resembles Call of Duty or anything that is an action shooter, because that's what the kids want. They want the shooty bang bang and the action going all the time. They don't have time to build suspense or horror or atmosphere. No, they need guns, lots of guns, and they need to play with their grubby ass friends. So let's make it multiplayer. And it's a co-op game. It is a co-op action game with a shitty, overcomplicated, convoluted plot that takes a giant dump on everything that Dead Space 1 and 2 had established, and I hate it. I hate it so much. That's all I got. It's the worst.
I still don't understand why is there co-op in my single player horror game.
Yeah, because you know what's really scary is having someone there to help you. That's definitely frightening. The fuck? And don't even get me started on the path they went down with the whole microtransactions for materials to craft your shit in the game.
Crafting mechanics.
Well, okay, Dead Space always had crafting.
Which is fine. Yeah.
But
yeah,
like charging people microtransactions because you're like, hey, do you not want to have to find these materials in the game? You could just pay us 99 cents. We'll give you a fucking butt ton of them, man. It's, oh God, it's the worst.
And I want to clarify, like Resident Evil 5, from what I understand, is actually a good game.
Right. I'm not saying it's a bad game. I'm just saying that it's, to me, it's not Resident Evil. That's all I'm saying.
No. And it has co-op, but the difference between Dead Space and Resident Evil is the very first Resident Evil game was campy as fuck. They have all been campy. Like high levels of camp. So when you get to a game and it's just not scary anymore and all you're doing is killing waves of zombies, I kind of get why people just didn't throw their hands up and quit. Because I think like Resident Evil 5 and 6 are some of the best-selling games in the series.
Which is insane for 6 specifically.
It's insane. It's crazy. But that's the difference between Dead Space and Resident Evil, because Dead Space 1 and 2 were not camp. They were genuinely like terrifying conceptually games.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't find them scary, but they were like, I didn't find one scary. I thought it was awesome. But like it had the atmosphere, like it had everything nailed down. It was not a campy game. So yeah, it's awful. So bad.
Look what they did to my boy. All right.
Well, that was a longer flight today.
It was.
But those were the games that killed the franchises that we loved, apparently. Not just any franchises, but franchises that we loved. And we'd like to thank Alt for nominating this topic. So there you go. You heard me talk about Lunar Dragon Song, Alt. You think I wasn't watching you? You think I'm not keeping track of that? Oh, I am. But thank you for being a patron and nominating the topic, and thank you, patrons, for voting on the topic, and you can too, if you just listen to what Shane says here in this spiel he's about to give us.
Oh, man. Well, if you head on over to our link tree, that is the link tree, the linktr.ee/retro hangover link tree, you will find that Patreon where you can join for as little as one buckaroo and get yourself access to a whole bunch of extra content, as well as our patron-only Discord channels in our otherwise totally free and public Discord, by the way. So even if you don't become a patron, highly suggest you get in there because our community is fantastic, if I do say so myself. You can find that. Yeah, for sure. So it's the only one I really regularly interact with because I ain't got the time. But yeah, so you should check that out. And also all the other things at that there link tree. We do have a merch store as well as our socials and the YouTube channel and our Twitch streams. And Chris, what do we do there? When can people see us play games at an arguably mediocre level?
Well, if you want to see middle-aged men playing games terribly and getting upset about it, you can head over to twitch.tv/retrohangover at Sundays at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And you know what the best part is? It's really like Mass Effect. The friends we make along the way. We have a fantastic community there that you can chat with.
I thought you were going to say it was unnecessary.
That too. But I was talking about Mass Effect 1 through 3, not Andromeda.
Okay.
If it was Andromeda, don't just, go to someone else's Twitch stream. Like they probably need it. But sounds really terrible. Like ours is like the king dick of Twitch streams.
No, we just say that because we don't make any money off of it.
No,
I'm sure somebody else does.
You won't see ads. You will not see ads there.
Nope.
Twitch does make money off of us, but we certainly don't because we are we are a generous god. So head over to twitch.tv/retrohangover and at Sunday at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, and we will see you there and interact with our fantastic community of like-minded and crazy people. Good crazy.
Well, there you have it. So, until next time.
Play with your I'm so upset it's flaccid joysticks.